Vex'kar had killed 18 different species across 47 star systems, and not once had his targets lived longer than 3 minutes after he'd accepted the contract. 3 minutes. That was his record, and frankly, he was rather proud of it. So when the hooded figure slid a data pad across the grimy table in the cantina on Zorith Prime, Vex'kar barely glanced at the payment amount before his 4 eyes widened in genuine surprise. This cannot be correct, he hissed through his mandibles, his purple exoskeleton clicking nervously. 50 million credits? For one target? The figure's voice was electronically modulated, impossible to identify. The target is challenging. Vex'kar's reputation hadn't been built on modesty. He was 7 feet tall, possessed reflexes that could dodge plasma bolts, and had enough cybernetic enhancements to punch through a battleship's hull. Challenging? Please. I once eliminated a Gornak warlord while he was surrounded by 300 of his personal guard, Vex'kar bragged, leaning back in his chair. I've killed psychic beings who could read my thoughts before I had them. What exactly makes this human so special? Human? The figure tilted its head. You've studied this species? Barely worth studying, Vex'kar waved a clawed hand dismissively. Weak, soft, short-lived mammals from a backwater planet. No natural weapons, no armor, no psychic abilities. They're basically walking meat sacks with delusions of grandeur. The figure pushed the data pad closer. This particular meat sack has survived 4 previous assassination attempts. The last assassin, well, let's just say we're still finding pieces of him scattered across 3 asteroid fields. Now that was interesting. Vex'kar's secondary eyes focused on the target profile while his primary eyes continued watching for threats. The human's name was Marcus Kane, apparently some sort of freight hauler operating out of the Outer Rim territories. Average height, brown hair, unremarkable in every possible way except for one detail: every assassin sent after him had been found in increasingly creative states of dismemberment. Luck, Vex'kar concluded, though something about the human's expression in the photo bothered him. Those eyes held too much intelligence, too much awareness. Or he's been hiring better security than expected. Perhaps, the figure agreed. His current location is included in the file. A space station called Haven's Rest, Sector 779. Very isolated. Vex'kar's mandibles clicked in amusement. Perfect. Isolated meant fewer witnesses, fewer complications. He could make this look like an accident if he felt creative, or simply vaporize the entire section if he was feeling lazy. Half now, half on completion, he stated, already mentally spending the credits. Already transferred, the figure replied, standing. Oh, and Vex'kar? You might want to read the psychological profile. This human has some unusual hobbies. 3 days later, Vex'kar's stealth ship docked at Haven's Rest, and he had to admit the location was impressively remote. The station orbited a dying red giant, its radiation playing havoc with most scanning equipment. Clever choice for someone trying to avoid attention. The station itself was a ramshackle collection of modules welded together with more enthusiasm than skill. About 3,000 inhabitants, mostly miners, smugglers, and the sort of people who asked very few questions about newcomers. Vex'kar had read Kane's psychological profile during the journey, and it painted a picture of a man with disturbingly eclectic interests. Apparently, the human collected antique torture devices, studied extinct predators for fun, and had once spent 6 months learning the mating dances of carnivorous plants. The report's conclusion was simple. Subject displays signs of advanced sociopathic tendencies masked by superficial charm. Well, that explained why someone wanted him dead. Finding Kane proved absurdly easy. The human operated out of Docking Bay 12, running cargo between the station and various mining operations in the system. According to station records, he lived alone in a converted cargo module attached to his ship. Vex'kar spent 2 days observing his target's routine, and honestly, it was almost insulting how predictable the human was. Every morning at 0800 station time, Kane would emerge from his quarters, grab something called coffee from a vendor, then spend the day loading or unloading cargo. Every evening at 2000, he'd return to his quarters and stay there until morning. No guards, no security system worth mentioning, no apparent awareness that death was stalking him. This was going to be disappointingly easy. On the third night, Vex'kar decided to end it. He'd disabled the corridor's surveillance systems, picked the lock on Kane's quarters, and slipped inside with the silence of a shadow. The room was dimly lit, filled with the kind of random junk typical of freight haulers, and there, sleeping peacefully in his bunk, was Marcus Kane. Vex'kar activated his wrist blade, a monomolecular edge that could slice through titanium like butter. One quick motion across the throat, and he'd be 50 million credits richer. He raised his arm. You know, a conversational voice said from behind him, most people knock first. Vex'kar spun around, impossible speed carrying him into a combat stance, blade extended. Standing in the doorway, very much awake and holding a cup of that coffee, was Marcus Kane, but that was impossible. Vex'kar's heat sensors clearly showed a warm body in the bunk. He glanced back and saw a pile of thermal blankets arranged to mimic a sleeping form. Neat trick, right? Kane continued, seemingly unconcerned about the 7-foot-tall alien assassin in his room. Picked it up from a Terran military manual. Chapter 12, Section 4, Basic Counter-Surveillance Techniques. Vex'kar's mandibles clicked in irritation. Clever, but irrelevant. Your reputation for survival ends tonight, human. Oh, you must be assassin number 5. Kane's face lit up with what appeared to be genuine delight. I was starting to think whoever's trying to kill me had given up. Please, come in, make yourself comfortable. Can I offer you some coffee? It's synthetic, but not terrible. The sheer absurdity of the situation momentarily stunned Vex'kar. His target was offering him refreshments. You do realize I'm here to kill you? Well, obviously, Kane replied, taking a sip of his coffee. Though I have to say, you guys are getting more creative. The last one tried to poison my air recycler. Points for innovation, minus points for not checking that I use a completely separate life support system. Vex'kar decided to end this bizarre conversation with violence. He lunged forward, monomolecular blade aimed at Kane's chest, moving fast enough to blur. Kane stepped sideways, and Vex'kar's blade buried itself in the wall behind where the human had been standing. Whoops, Kane said mildly. Might want to watch where you point that thing. Impossible. Vex'kar's enhanced reflexes should have made that attack unavoidable. He yanked his blade free and spun, slashing horizontally at chest height. Kane ducked under the swing, somehow managing not to spill his coffee. You know, this reminds me of a documentary I watched about extinct Terran predators. There was this thing called a praying mantis, lightning-fast reflexes, incredible hunter. But you know what always fascinated me about them? Vex'kar pressed his attack, combining blade work with his natural claws, creating a whirlwind of lethal edges. Kane flowed around every strike like water, never seeming hurried, never spilling a drop of his drink. They had this interesting weakness, Kane continued conversationally, as if they weren't engaged in mortal combat. For all their speed and precision, they were actually pretty stupid. One-track minds, you might say. Very predictable once you understood their programming. Programming. That word hit Vex'kar like a physical blow, and suddenly he realized what was happening. Every attack he'd made had been perfectly countered, not through superior speed or strength, but through prediction. Kane was reading his moves before he made them. You studied my species, Vex'kar hissed, backing away. Oh, extensively, Kane confirmed, finally setting down his coffee cup. Fascinating biology, really. Your neural pathways follow very specific patterns when engaging in combat. Muscle memory, instinctive responses, cybernetic enhancement protocols. All very logical, very efficient. Kane reached into a drawer and pulled out what looked like a standard plasma pistol. Except Vex'kar's enhanced vision immediately identified 17 illegal modifications that turned it into something that could probably crack a moon. Also very predictable, Kane added, almost apologetically. Your attack patterns, your defensive responses, even your escape routes. I've been tracking your movements for the past 3 days, cross-referencing them with behavioral studies of your species. Did you know you unconsciously favor your left side when retreating? Fascinating quirk of your neural architecture. For the first time in his career, Vex'kar felt something he'd never experienced before, genuine fear. This wasn't a soft, helpless human. This was a predator who'd been studying him like a specimen. The previous assassins, Vex'kar managed, what happened to them? Kane's smile was perfectly pleasant and absolutely terrifying. Well, the first one tried a direct approach, much like yourself. Poor fellow didn't realize humans have been studying combat psychology for thousands of years. The second one attempted subtlety, poison in my food supply. Didn't account for my rather paranoid eating habits. The modified plasma weapon hummed to life in Kane's hands. The third tried explosives. Very messy. The fourth went for psychological warfare, trying to drive me insane before moving in for the kill. That one was actually fun. I do so enjoy a good mental chess match. Vex'kar's survival instincts finally overcame his professional pride. This human wasn't prey. This was an apex predator wearing the mask of a simple freight hauler. Now then, Kane said, weapon trained on Vex'kar's center mass, I believe we need to have a serious conversation about who sent you and why they want me dead. Because here's the thing about humans that your employer clearly didn't research. Kane's pleasant expression never changed, but something cold and ancient flickered behind his eyes. We're really, really good at holding grudges. Vex'kar had faced death before, but never while sitting in a surprisingly comfortable chair, sipping what the human called the good stuff from a bottle labeled Earth Whiskey, 2387 vintage. The irony wasn't lost on him that he might die drunk on his target's hospitality. So, Kane said, settling into the opposite chair with his own glass, let's talk business. 5 assassination attempts in 6 months suggest someone really, really wants me dead. The question is who, and more importantly, why? The modified plasma weapon lay casually on the table between them, close enough for Kane to grab but positioned to remind Vex'kar exactly how quickly this pleasant conversation could turn lethal. You could simply kill me and be done with it, Vex'kar pointed out, his mandibles clicking nervously. The whiskey burned pleasantly down his throat, though he suspected it was probably poisoned. Humans seem to enjoy their elaborate death traps. Where's the fun in that? Kane replied, swirling his drink thoughtfully. Besides, dead assassins don't provide useful information. Living ones, on the other hand, can be surprisingly talkative when properly motivated. Vex'kar's 4 eyes focused on his captor with new appreciation. The human had orchestrated this entire encounter, from the obviously fake sleeping form to the casual conversation during their fight. Even now, Kane was extracting information while maintaining the pretense of civilized discourse. The contract came through standard channels, Vex'kar admitted, figuring cooperation might extend his lifespan. Anonymous client, payment in untraceable credits. Very professional, very expensive. 50 million is certainly generous, Kane mused. Someone with deep pockets and deeper motivation. Did your research include any background on why someone would want a simple freight hauler eliminated? Simple freight hauler. Right. Vex'kar was beginning to suspect that Marcus Kane was about as simple as a quantum computer having an existential crisis. The file suggested you'd made enemies in your previous occupation, Vex'kar said carefully. Kane's expression didn't change, but something shifted in the room's atmosphere. The temperature seemed to drop several degrees. Previous occupation, Kane repeated slowly. Now that's interesting. Most people assume I've always been hauling cargo between mining stations. What exactly did this file say about my past? Vex'kar accessed his cybernetic memory banks, projecting the relevant data onto his optical display. Military service, Terran Colonial Defense Force. Specialized in unconventional warfare. Discharged under classified circumstances, psychological evaluation pending. Psychological evaluation, Kane chuckled, but the sound held no warmth. That's a polite way of saying they couldn't decide if I was a hero or a monster. Turns out, in some situations, there's not much difference between the two. The human stood and moved to a storage locker, retrieving what appeared to be a standard military duffel bag. When he opened it, Vex'kar's enhanced vision immediately catalogued the contents: enough weapons and explosives to level a city block, plus several items he couldn't identify but which radiated dangerous energy signatures. You see, Vex'kar, my freight hauling operation is actually quite profitable, but it's not exactly legal freight I'm moving, Kane explained, pulling out what looked like a Xanath military-grade neural disruptor. Turns out there's a thriving black market for certain types of sensitive materials. Weapons smuggling, Vex'kar concluded. Among other things, Kane confirmed. Information, rare artifacts, occasionally people who need to disappear for their own safety. I provide a service for those who can't use conventional channels. Kane set the neural disruptor on the table next to his plasma weapon, creating what Vex'kar recognized as a very pointed message about cooperation. 3 months ago, I accepted a contract to transport something rather special. A data core containing financial records from a certain mining consortium's illegal activities. Strip mining protected worlds, bribing colonial officials, the usual corporate nastiness. Someone wanted those records exposed, Vex'kar guessed. Someone wanted them destroyed, Kane corrected. The client paid me to deliver the core to a specific location where it would be safely disposed of. Except, well, curiosity killed the cat, as we humans say. Kane's smile was absolutely predatory. I made a copy before making the delivery. Call it insurance, call it blackmail material, call it whatever you like. The point is, someone knows I have information that could destroy their very lucrative criminal enterprise. The pieces clicked together in Vex'kar's enhanced mind. The Hegemony Mining Consortium. They've been accused of illegal operations across 17 systems, but nothing's ever been proven. Hard to prove crimes when the evidence keeps disappearing along with the witnesses, Kane agreed. But digital records are much harder to eliminate than inconvenient people. Unless, of course, you eliminate the person who has the records. Vex'kar found himself impressed despite the circumstances. The human had essentially declared war on one of the galaxy's most powerful corporations and was winning through sheer audacity. So what happens now? Vex'kar asked. You kill me, they send assassin number 6, and this continues until one of us gets lucky? Oh, I have a much better idea, Kane said, his expression lighting up with enthusiasm that was frankly terrifying. See, the thing about humans is we don't just hold grudges. We get creative with our revenge. Kane pulled out a communication device and began entering commands. I'm going to send a message to your employer, confirming that you've successfully eliminated Marcus Kane. Congratulations, by the way, you're about to become the most successful assassin in the galaxy. I don't understand. Marcus Kane, simple freight hauler, dies tonight, Kane explained. Tragically vaporized when his ship's reactor suffered a catastrophic malfunction. Very sad, very thorough, very permanent. Kane's fingers danced across the device's interface with practiced efficiency. Meanwhile, a new identity emerges. Someone with Marcus Kane's skills but without his baggage. Someone who can move freely while the hegemony believes their problem is solved. Vex'kar's mandibles clicked in what might have been admiration. You're faking your own death. With your help, Kane confirmed. You see, I need a witness. Someone credible who can testify to seeing Marcus Kane's spectacular demise. Someone with a reputation for never failing a contract. And in exchange? Kane's expression became serious. You get to live, you get paid for a successful assassination, and you get to walk away from this mess with your reputation intact. Plus, you'll have done the galaxy a favor by helping expose the hegemony's crimes. Or I could simply kill you now and collect the bounty honestly, Vex'kar pointed out. Kane's hand moved to the neural disruptor with casual confidence. You could try. But we both know how that worked out last time. Besides, wouldn't you rather be part of something bigger than just another murder? Vex'kar considered his options. He could attempt to complete his original contract, likely dying in the process. Or he could participate in what was essentially an elaborate con game designed to bring down a criminal organization that had been terrorizing the outer systems for decades. What exactly do you need me to do? Kane's grin was pure predatory satisfaction. First, we stage a convincing explosion. I've got enough thermal charges to make it look like a reactor overload. You'll observe from a safe distance, then report back to your employer with details of my gruesome demise. Kane began pulling equipment from various storage compartments, his movements efficient and practiced. Then, while the hegemony thinks they're safe, I start systematically destroying their operations. Mining facilities suffer mysterious accidents, their financial records get leaked to colonial authorities, key personnel start disappearing. You're planning to wage a one-man war against an interstellar corporation. Not one man, Kane corrected, gesturing toward Vex'kar. I'm going to need allies. People with specialized skills who understand the value of bringing down corrupt organizations. Vex'kar's 4 eyes widened as he realized what the human was proposing. You want to recruit me? I want to offer you a job, Kane clarified. Better pay than assassination work, more interesting targets, and the satisfaction of actually making the galaxy a slightly better place. What do you say? For a moment, Vex'kar considered the absolute insanity of what he was being offered. Partnership with a human who had just outmaneuvered him completely, involvement in a campaign against one of the most powerful organizations in known space, and the chance to use his skills for something more meaningful than simple murder. The pay really is better, he asked. Kane's laugh was genuine this time. Much better. Plus, you'll get to be creative. No more simple assassinations. Think of it as problem-solving with extreme prejudice. 20 minutes later, Vex'kar stood at the observation deck of Haven's Rest, watching Marcus Kane's ship explode in a spectacular display of plasma fire and twisted metal. The explosion was visible from 3 systems away, thoroughly convincing, and completely fake. The real ship was safely hidden in a debris field 2 light-years away, while Kane himself was already beginning his transformation into someone new. As Vex'kar transmitted his report to the anonymous client, confirming the target's elimination and requesting payment, he reflected on the strange turn his career had taken. Yesterday, he'd been the galaxy's most feared assassin. Today, he was apparently part of a two-being crusade against corporate corruption. Humans, he decided, were absolutely terrifying. And he was looking forward to working with one. The Hegemony Mining Consortium had no idea what was coming for them. But they were about to learn a hard lesson about underestimating humans and their capacity for elaborate, long-term revenge. After all, holding grudges was just the beginning.